Mic check, everybody good on mic check? Anyone need a white balance? Good. Awesome. Okay, thank you everyone for being here today. Today we're going to talk about the partnership between APD and ACS and all that they've been doing citywide to address juvenile crime. So today we'll be hearing from Mayor Keller, Chief Harold Medina, Commander Jeff Bernard, Director Jodie Esquibel, and Deputy Director Jasmine Desiderio. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mayor to get us started.
Thanks and good afternoon. As was mentioned, we're going to touch on a number of things today, but specifically it's really about what we're doing both in terms of youth crime and with respect to how we're working on the front end of trying to prevent that. Also what we're trying to do literally with law enforcement to reduce crime, but then also on the back end to prevent further crime. And so we've looked at this from a number of different angles over the past year. And I think the first one is just to acknowledge that we do obviously live in a digital world and our criminals live there too. And so this is something that we always see flare up, especially usually actually during the summer. But that intersection between social media videos and cell phones and guns and how that combination can get deadly. But what we're working on in APD and at ACS is actually the problems underneath that, because we actually take that as a given. That is a social trend. These are things that are happening in not just Albuquerque, but all over America. And so the first step we have to do is accept that that's the reality and then figure out what we're going to do about it. Now, we know this obviously is especially prevalent among juvenile crime. So the intersection between these issues and juvenile crime is extremely high. And so APD is going to highlight some examples of this later. But really what we want to highlight especially is how APD is handling this on the crime side and also how ACS, our community safety department, is handling this literally actually inside our schools. So when we got into the digital intelligence world, which you're going to hear all about, we just want to make sure and assure everyone, number one, that we have a team that understands everything that I just said at APD. And they use that in all sorts of ways. So we are out there watching, just as we would be if we were in a vehicle or in our cameras around the city. We are also absolutely watching on social media. And in fact, we use social media as one of the primary ways to gain evidence to also make sure that we can keep people in jail and prosecute them because of that evidence that is usually on social media. So we have a team that does that, and that's what we want to highlight here today. And that's our digital intelligence team. And we also want to highlight what ACS is doing in connection to that. And that really has to do with our violence intervention work. And so this is something that we started many years ago, but now it has a heavily juvenile focused and social media component. And it basically works like this. And some of you have heard how these programs work in our schools. We now are one of the only cities in the country that has an embedded violence intervention program in our high schools. And this is now in, I believe, 4 high schools in the city of Albuquerque. And what this is it's essentially like an elective class, but it's like not really an elective. And the kids who are in this program are getting sort of 2 things at once. Number one, they are getting instructed and taught and mentored by a formerly incarcerated individual about the path that they're on. These are individuals who are already on and have a record of crime, even though they're juveniles. And so they're learning about that sort of, more traditional way of like, look, it's not too late to change your life and get off this trajectory. But then also the community safety department is pairing that with, why are you on a dangerous path? Is it because of issues at home? Is it because of violence at home? Is it because of basic needs like hunger? And the community safety department actually works with a peer reinforcement model to help address those issues as well. And then the class itself becomes in many ways the new cohort or friend group for those kids. And we need this in every high school in our city. We've worked very hard to get it in 4, but every high school deserves this and needs this, and that's something we're going to continue to push forward on in the upcoming legislative session. So the idea here is that these are the highest risk youth, And we actually meet them initially in things like the hospital after violence has been inflicted upon them, or in some cases, they have been the perpetrator. And so we connect that then into our schools and then back into the neighborhood. And we know this demonstrates success. We know that in general, kids that are in this program have an 80% increase in their grades. And we also know they have an 80% less likely chance to commit essentially another crime. And so it's actually been one of our highest returns on investment. But we can't put all this together without digital intelligence, because actually as part of that work, we have to know what they're doing on social media, if we can. And we have to understand what their friend group is doing on social media and the kind of pressures and the kind of social activities that they're engaged in. So we're trying to match what the criminals are already doing with what we're doing for both social services and for law enforcement. And that's what we're going to share with you today. So with that, what I'm going to do is hand it over. I think we're going to start, Chief, with our Chief of Police, Harold Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, like Mayor talked about, I think it's important that we recognize that we have a multi-pronged approach at juvenile violence. It would be very one-dimensional of us to talk about the fact that we just were going to have a team that went out and arrested juveniles. I think it's important to recognize that we start at prevention, and prevention is the best way for us to start off with getting people down the right path. And our digital intelligence team is one of those teams that really assist us with prevention. We created this team at the Albuquerque Police Department in about 2021, 2022. And what this team does is it helps us to prevent some of these shootings, because we see escalated confrontations between groups of individuals online. And with our help with VIP and others, we're able to go out, talk to these individuals, lower the temperature of what's occurring, and hopefully divert them in the right direction. And many times you will find that an intervention of this type at these points in time can greatly reduce your shootings, because every contact with officers is proven in the past to have shown that the person will start off back at ground zero and they'll have to build the escalation once again. So I think it's important we recognize prevention is the number one thing. Digital intelligence team that we started, they watch social media, they have accounts, they keep eye on when things are starting to build up, and then they send the next group of officers and VIP personnel to kind of intervene and deal with that. The next part is intervention, and we know that many times we have one shooting which triggers another shooting, which triggers another shooting, and it goes back and forth. And over the years, any seasoned officer is going to tell you that they saw the escalation of cases where individuals end up shooting each other several times across the board from different groups and different gangs. So what VIP does is we really work within the schools with our juveniles to make sure that we're intervening and we're stopping this cycle of violence that in the past used to occur until somebody was arrested. We know that we don't always have all the information, and cases are sometimes hard to build, and we know that the faster we could intervene, the more successful we're going to be in follow-up shootings. The last big part that the police department focuses on is enforcement. It is our job to enforce laws, to create accountability for our juveniles, and to ensure that our juveniles are put into the system and that they are either directed to make changes in their life or hopefully incarcerated for a period of time, that they're not going to be endangering the public. I think it's important to kind of remember some of our successes over the years. Once again, DIT has been instrumental in us being able to bring individuals to justice, bring a sense of justice to families and closure by making those arrests. And you know, in 2021, when I took over as chief, we've talked about it several times. Clearance rate on homicides was somewhere around 55%, and we've been hovering mid-95s, and this year we've actually cleared more cases, including some from the past, than have actually come in this year. We have a 35% reduction in homicides as a whole, and it's part of this process of us being very proactive. But how did we get there? And yes, we have strong technology. We've talked about that. We have motivated officers. We developed a detective academy. They're better trained as detectives than ever before. But I think the last piece is that we have to remember is we created a true comp stat process. Duke City Stat, every week they meet, and commanders and specialized units are held accountable to get results on cases. Just last week, There was a lot of accountability being pushed towards investigations for a shooting that had occurred at Jade Park, I believe it was. And just yesterday, they took somebody into custody, and they were able to charge somebody in some of those shootings. So the accountability factor is something that's important to us. We want to ensure that our officers are being held accountable, to ensure that arrests are being made, that we are working cases as quickly as possible and getting people into custody as quickly as possible. If you go back years, many times you saw individuals who were involved in multiple shootings, and now we're seeing that less and less because we've gotten so much better at taking people into custody after the first shooting or the first homicide and ensuring that it doesn't continue to go forward. I just want to close this part with me just reminding everybody that, accountability and ensuring that juveniles are held accountable for the crimes that they commit is still something that is of a concern to the police department. We will be working this next legislative session with all of our legislators, and hopefully we can move forward some type of legislation that will help us hold individuals accountable when they have to be held accountable, but at the same time give resources to those that are working with our VIP and with ACS to ensure that the family has resources to successful outcomes, and that they could get the help they need to become a better, stronger family unit. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Commander Bernard. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Bernard, and I'm the commander of the Criminal Investigation Division. So just to kind of talk a little bit why digital intelligence was created. So if you go back a few years in time, before we had the digital intelligence team, we would have an extreme backlog of phones and things of that nature that we needed to look into for evidentiary purposes. We'd have to ship out a lot of that stuff out to different partners and various things like that, and that would create an extreme backlog in some of the calls that we had. So we started the program out with just 3 examiners a few years ago, and we've been able to currently increase that to 14 people in our digital intelligence program. So just to give you kind of a little brief overview of what they've done this year, they've analyzed over 1,200 record sets year to date so far. So record sets can be anything from a cell phone extraction to looking at various social media accounts and getting the data from that for certain data ranges or date ranges. Burla records, which is kind of think of the computer in a vehicle and looking at what that can show us in reference to location data or other contacts and things of that nature. So they've been just super instrumental from a technological standpoint. The other thing that I think gets lost in what they do is they've become an expert witness for us, so to speak. So we've had our digital intelligence team testify in 21 homicide trials this year. And the vast majority of our team is currently certified as expert witnesses in court, which it's always important to solve the cases, but I think a piece that gets lost is the outcome of those cases down the road. And this is making sure that we finish those cases on the right note and that we're getting the convictions and the justice is served for those people that commit these crimes. So some of the stuff that they're doing on a daily basis. So obviously I think we've talked a lot about it as a department before, but we're seeing a lot of communication between juveniles and other crimes just related to social media. So we see various texts that go out, and a lot of those are through different apps, services. We're not seeing traditional text as much with, your iPhone text or things of that nature, but we'll see text on Snapchat, Instagram messages, things of that nature. And juveniles particularly will use a lot of shorthand or slang for that to talk about what they're doing. We've seen emojis used in that same manner. So, we've talked about, and we've put a list out before, but if you see, your kids with a squirt gun emoji as an example, that could be meaning they're trying to sell a gun, or a snowflake emoji could be talking about narcotics that they're trying to sell. And we see a lot of those gun and narcotic transactions used with emojis. So if you look at some of this is some previous cases that our digital intelligence team has worked, and I think the thing that jumps out at me first and foremost is how young some of these kids look that have firearms on there, and the issues that we're trying to combat with all the firearms available for sale, the narcotics available for sale online, and who these people are and what they're doing. So we've been able to take cases like this where we haven't started with anything, and we've been able to identify these people through the work of our digital intelligence team and show that they're minors and can't be in possession of a firearm. And we've used that to start and build cases where we've been able to proactively address these issues. Or, as it's been mentioned, sometimes criminal charges aren't the most appropriate thing, and we've been able to refer that to ACS and our other partners so we can have our violence intervention program work on custom notifications for those kids and families. This is some of the video evidence that we've seen in it. So if you look at this first one, these are basically Glock switches, and people will put videos out like this, signifying that they're selling items of this nature. So the second and third video, kind of similar. I think this just unfortunately highlights the culture currently with the youth, where they're glorifying firearms and having the firearms, possession of firearms, possession of narcotics. And I think that while some of it may start out as benign, these cases eventually end up going somewhere where somebody gets hurt and it just progresses to a bad point. So the earlier we can intervene in this stuff, which we have our digital intelligence team looking at, I think the better off we all are. For this one, we're going to talk about a case that we had. And we've arrested some subjects on this case. This is the Christopher Sanchez homicide. We still have some outstanding suspects that we're looking into, so I'm not going to go into a ton of specific details on it. But this is a case that happened a year ago, and just to highlight the work that our digital intelligence team and detectives have done, there have been 60 warrants done on this case over the last year. So, I mean, that would be unheard of a few years ago. And it goes to show you how we're able to get these convictions and these subjects arrested when you're talking about 60 warrants on a case, but why we've had to add staffing to the program to make it happen. One of the things you'll notice, this picture over here with the Corvette, so this is something that our digital intelligence team has recently done. We've talked a little bit about Altel devices before, which is a new device that's helped people steal vehicles. We're actually able to analyze the data in that Altel device with our digital intelligence team, and we were able to show that they used that device to program the Corvette that's actually in this picture. So on the night that this homicide occurred, they'd actually stolen this Corvette, this group of kids as well. So this helped link it to that, and there's been, I want to say in this case, there's probably 7 or 8 other auto thefts related to this case that we were able to issue charges for, and there's still further cases down the road that we're going to work on with that, with the other subjects. This next case is more recent. So this is one of the offenders from the case. This is the Angel Pacoya homicide that we had over off Tramway a few months ago. And this is some of the material that we were able to get from this case. So essentially, like, the first one is just the Instagram story where we're able to get a visual of the subject, and we're able to link that to their MVD photo and show who they are, which helped link parts of that case right away. And then you'll see that various videos that we have throughout the city that we use as a department with the Real-Time Crime Center and other things that have been able to help us find the vehicles and track the location that these people go to. So in this incident, there was actually, they were in a stolen vehicle at the time of the homicide. They had set up a robbery with another individual, essentially where they were going to buy a firearm, and they ended up robbing him and shooting him during that incident. The picture in the middle where you see the neighborhood, this is actually location data from one of their devices showing that they went and they stole a vehicle in this area, and they dropped off the vehicle where they'd committed the homicide in. So it helps us link everything together. And then there's some Instagram stories on here from people involved in that night or other nights where this group of juveniles was together committing some of these crimes. This group had actually committed a robbery the day prior to the homicide where they had shot an individual on that incident, and this picture on the far right here is from that. And then this firearm that you see here is actually the firearm that was stolen during the robbery of the homicide. So we were able to get this imagery all from things that we were doing with the extraction on our digital intelligence team and various social media things. Yeah, and then the last thing I'll talk about before we go into this is what we do with, so we've talked about Duke City Stats a lot and the accountability aspect of that, but one thing we've also tried to do is mirror that in terms of gun crime and any homicides that we're seeing. So we've created a Thursday meeting. We call it it's basically the gun review meeting. So we talk about every single case that we've had that week involving a firearm, or for the last week period. During that, we'll get every single team, which also works in the same office, together, and that way they can communicate about any instances they've had where the field has arrested somebody with a firearm, or they have a specific case going on, or they're seeing somebody possibly in reference to a previous case that they know that's kind of ancillary to what's going on. So I guess if I was to slow that down a little bit, unfortunately we see repeat offenders, and it's not always them committing the shooting themselves or something along those lines. We'll see someone commit a crime and they'll be with a shooter, and then we'll see another incident pop up a couple weeks later, and we'll be able to link those together, kind of make the groups out of this, and that's where we can target the entire group of that incident. And we've kind of talked about it a bit, but we hit that on multiple sides, right? So there's people that are obviously going to get charged in those incidences. And then we also have people that may not have any criminal predicate at the time, and those are a lot of the referrals that we send to VIP. So every case that we talk about, we figure out the next steps on the follow-up. Do we have different warrants we need to look at? Do we have different people that we're going to be arresting? Who's going to work on apprehension on these pieces? And then, who we're going to send these custom referrals to. So every case that we send a custom referral to goes to VIP, and then we communicate with them on their background and information of that nature, and then we start doing that. And these individuals that we see in that, we continue to track and follow as things progress. So the team isn't going to just, after the case is solved, we understand a lot of these people are released, or maybe, like I said, they weren't the actual one charged on that specific case, but we know they're involved in this group. So we're going to continue to monitor that for, well, basically as long as we're seeing them commit illicit activity on their social media accounts or anything of that nature. And we're going to follow up, whether that's with VIP or if that's a criminal investigation, so to speak. And in addition to VIP partners there, we keep every team that has a gun case involved in that, which is our gang unit, our impact unit, gun violence reduction unit. We've reorganized the department in the last few years, so we have all those teams together for each and every single case, so we can get the most holistic approach on it. And then we've also added our CGIC, which is our Crime Gun Intelligence Center, as part of the division as well. So any sort of NIBIN leads that we get for the casings, those are immediately shared with every single team in the meeting, and all of that is utilized for solving these cases. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to ACS.
Thank you, Commander. So to further explain the partnership between APD and ACS, we had Commander Bernard talk about what happens on the APD side, and we've brought our ACS partners here to talk about what happens in that pipeline after APD has dealt with their side of things. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jasmine Desiderio.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jasmine Desiderio, Deputy Director at the Albuquerque Community Safety Department over the Violence Intervention Program Division of ACS. I want to give more insight on what a custom notification is. I provided a visual aid in hopes of further collaborating and understanding how we collaborate with APD. So once APD does their data intelligence team, we receive information. We work collaboratively with an APD assigned officer that comes to our office, and we discuss the case that is happening. We deliver a custom notification. This custom notification is then delivered with a peer support worker from ACS and the APD detective, and we make contact with the individual who has been identified for this custom to let them know, and with respective messaging, APD will go in with their message regarding what Commander Bernard had mentioned of making sure that they understand they are being watched and they have this information, so if anything happens, there'll be a swift immediate enforcement action. Or on our end, we provide our messaging of saying we're not enforcement, but we understand what is going on and we would like to help if you'd like to be connected to services, but further understand what additional support would look like for the individual and their family. And want to share some successes right now in, can you go back? In the past 2 years, we have seen a 92.6 success rate. What that means is, in the past 2 years, people who have been identified and received custom notifications have not further engaged in violent crimes, and our engagement rates nationally is higher than the national rate right now. And I want to provide our success story of what it means. After APD has done their due diligence in providing us that information, we work collaboratively to ensure that that individual amongst all of the teams within the VIP division support those individuals that have been identified and needing support in reducing their engagement in violent crimes, but also understanding what those root causes might be. So the case that we're going to review now is we had a 17-year-old male who was arrested and charged. He had stolen a vehicle, and he had a firearm on him. He went through the process that APD has. He was identified as an individual who may be at high risk for re-engaging in a violent crime. So he was delivered a custom notification with APD and ACS VIP teams. Upon the VIP peer that was assigned to the case did gather additional information and understanding what additional services this client may need, and come to find out we were able to identify that the 17-year-old was gang affiliated. He was at high risk of dropping out of school. He fortunately was still trying to go to school. He had low attendance rates as well as high attendance rates and low grades. And he was actually very high on the potential of re-engaging in violent crimes. So we were able to take that case and refer it over to our school-based violence intervention program. Our school-based violence intervention program was able to enroll him in a school that he was already attending that had full-time SBVIP programming available. We were able to support him with academic support, employment support, as well as him attending our life skills class, which is co-facilitated with APS. And just recently, he actually took lead in a discussion with his peers regarding community gun violence. He's been in our caseload for a little over a year and a half maybe, and we were able to offer wraparound services not only for him but his family as well. The outcomes that we have seen in his case right now is he currently maintains above a 3.0 GPA. He's on track to graduate on time. He's also maintained holding a part-time job as well as keeping up with his academics. He was released early from juvenile probation. He's no longer gang affiliated, has not re-engaged in any type of violent crime in the city, and he is actively continuing to engage with our school-based violence intervention program. These major successes are important to highlight because this individual may have not received the support if he was not identified through the custom notification and receiving additional support from APD as well as ACS. The school-based violence intervention program has also, you can see here, we engage with the individuals and trying to understand what it means to heal and to prevent additional crime. We address identifying what those systematic barriers might be. We also tackle the root causes of their violence and their trauma. And instead of punishing them and being a punitive program, we want to be there to support that student as well as their families, because in most cases there are a lot of issues that are happening that we want to be able to address. And what that looks like is us offering wraparound services. And when I say wraparound services, it's not just for the student, but the families may be in need of a food box. They might need rental assistance. We're there to listen and to understand how we could be of service and connect them to long-term services support or community-based organizations that would be able to assist them with the needs that we have identified. The successes of this would not be possible without our partnership with APS, participating schools within APS, but also our community partners. So I'd like to thank them. This is not the end goal, right? The SBVIP program has been showing a lot of great outcomes and data, and we want to be ensure we're evolving with the program and the needs of the city of Albuquerque. So we've seen that SBVIP now has a curriculum that is co-facilitated with APS, so we're able to provide them additional support on life skills training. We also have expanded into Del Norte High School. We also are taking students from RFK Middle School as well as the high school, and recently have received an increase of support and requests from middle schools within APS to add a full-time programming within their schools. So that is a major highlight for us to understand that there are more schools who are interested in having this type of programming available for their students. Also with this program, in May of this year, ACS has created a new program called the Youth VIP program. This is to be in collaboration with our school-based violence intervention program, but this particular team focuses on kids who are identified as at higher risk and re-engaging in violent crime, but they are not in school, currently not working, and do not have a support system. So we're able to offer the same supports that our school-based violence intervention program offers on campuses, but outside of school to provide them additional support. We've received over 33 referrals since May of this year, and have currently on our caseload 11, but that also requires us to work collaboratively with APD. The information that we're receiving and working in partnership with them also identifies these kids who may need these supports and connect them immediately to services in the community. We're prioritizing the vulnerability of these kids to ensure that they have the support at critical moments in their life. So we're about interrupting the cycles of violence, but we're also wanting to ensure that our kids in this next generation are set up for success in the future. And I just want to highlight across all of the programs within the ACS Violence Intervention Division, we have engaged over 193 youth under the age of 17 years old that are in need of support with addiction to substances, have experienced some type of violent traumatic injury, or have been identified as high risk of engaging and continuing their involvement in violence in the city. So we have done a lot, but more could be done. And we want to be clear that we want to do as much as we can because we can't afford to lose our generation to violence, especially when we have the tools to prevent it. Thank you. And with that, I'll bring up our director, Jodie Esquibel. Thank you.
We're actually going to go ahead and jump to Q&A. We have still here our commander and Jasmine. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I do. For the commander, I know that this week the popular app Roblox announced that it was going to basically limit the age of who can message people. Can you talk about the digital intelligence team and whether apps like Roblox are like making an impact with the work that you're doing, or you're finding that crimes are being committed on apps like that?
So I think unfortunately we see there's crimes committed on several apps, right? I think that it's kind of a cat and mouse game where they see things that we're looking at and they try new apps to see what's working on there, which is why the digital intelligence team has been so key. So we're constantly exploring new apps, we're looking at things, and we're trying to keep up to date with the newest trends, so to speak. So anything that's out there, we're currently looking at it, and we're going to continue looking at anything that comes available. But I don't think there's anything that's 100% safe. Obviously, we see some more than others. Telegram's been historically one that we see a lot. Instagram's been one that we see a lot. But it's possible they can do these things on any apps.
Yeah, this is for the mayor. We see all this data, APD, ACS, they're doing a great job. But outside in Santa Fe, they're not doing their job. And some of those people endorse you for mayor. Would you renounce a mayoral endorsement until we get juvenile crime like a harder, with the bite of the teeth with the law, especially violent crime and homicides and things like that? Specifically, Javier Martinez, I mean, he lives just down the street and he stalls juvenile crime to have a bite and give victims justice.
Well, first off, it's a political question that's not really appropriate for this press conference, but we're not going to confuse the two issues. We're going to fight crime, and I appreciate people who support me and public servants.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, everybody.